In a 200 amp service panel, the question arises whether to separate the ground and neutral when new 220 volts appliances with 4-wire capabilities are installed, especially when the ground rod is connected to the neutral at the meter box. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, dictates how grounding and bonding are handled in electrical systems. It's crucial to understand these requirements to ensure safety and compliance. At the service entrance, which is where the main service panel is located, the NEC allows, and typically requires, the neutral conductor, also known as the grounded conductor, to be bonded to the grounding system. This bonding is achieved by connecting the neutral bus bar to the metal enclosure of the service panel, which is then connected to the grounding electrode system, such as a ground rod. The purpose of this bond is to provide a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source, facilitating the operation of overcurrent protection devices like circuit breakers. Now, if you're installing new 220 volts appliances that have a 4-wire configuration, meaning they have separate ground and neutral connections, you need to ensure that the grounding conductor from the appliance is connected to the grounding bus bar in the service panel, which is bonded to the panel enclosure and, consequently, the grounding electrode system. However, it's generally not necessary or required to reconfigure the existing service panel to completely separate the ground and neutral at the main service panel. The NEC allows the neutral and ground to be bonded only at one point in the system, which is typically at the service entrance. Downstream from the service entrance, such as in subpanels, the ground and neutral conductors must be kept separate. If you have subpanels fed from the main service panel, it's imperative that the neutral and ground are not bonded in those subpanels. The grounding conductor in the subpanel should be connected to a separate grounding bus bar that is isolated from the neutral bus bar. This prevents circulating neutral currents on the grounding conductors, which can create safety hazards. In your specific scenario, with the ground rod connected to the neutral at the meter box outside the home, this is a common and acceptable practice. The ground rod provides a path to earth for fault currents, helping to stabilize the electrical system's voltage with respect to ground. Given that your main service panel already has the neutral and ground bonded, and the ground rod is connected to the neutral at the meter box, separating the ground and neutral at the main service panel might not be effective or necessary. The key is to ensure that the grounding conductor from the new 220 volts appliances is properly connected to the grounding bus bar in the service panel. If you were to install a subpanel, then you would need to make sure you do not bond the neutral to the ground at that point. Let's elaborate on the requirements for grounding electrode systems. The NEC specifies the types of grounding electrodes that are acceptable, including ground rods, ground plates, metal underground water pipes, and concrete encased electrodes, also known as UFA grounds. The selection of the appropriate grounding electrode depends on various factors such as soil conditions and local regulations. When using ground rods, the NEC typically requires at least 2 ground rods to be installed, spaced at least 6 feet apart. This ensures a more effective connection to earth and reduces the impedance of the grounding path. The grounding electrode conductor, which connects the grounding electrode to the service equipment, must be sized appropriately based on the size of the service entrance conductors. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum size of the grounding electrode conductor based on the size of the service entrance conductors. It's crucial to adhere to these sizing requirements to ensure that the grounding system can effectively carry fault current. Furthermore, the NEC outlines requirements for bonding various metal components in the electrical system to ensure electrical continuity and prevent voltage differences. This includes bonding metal water pipes, gas pipes, and metal building components. The purpose of bonding these metal components is to create an equipotential plane, minimizing the risk of electric shock. When working with electrical systems, it's always recommended to consult with a qualified electrician who is familiar with the NEC and local electrical codes. They can assess your specific situation and provide guidance on the proper grounding and bonding techniques to ensure safety and compliance. Attempting to modify electrical systems without proper knowledge and experience can be dangerous and may violate electrical codes. Let's discuss some common misconceptions about grounding and bonding. One misconception is that the grounding system is primarily intended to protect people from electric shock. While the grounding system does play a role in preventing electric shock, its primary purpose is to provide a low-impedance path for fault current to return to the source, allowing overcurrent protection devices to operate. Another misconception is that a single ground rod is sufficient for an effective grounding system. As mentioned earlier, the NEC typically requires at least 2 ground rods to be installed to ensure a more reliable connection to earth. Some people also believe that the grounding system is only necessary for sensitive electronic equipment. However, the grounding system is essential for all electrical systems, regardless of whether they include sensitive electronic equipment. It's important to understand the fundamental principles of grounding and bonding to ensure the safety and reliability of electrical systems. Now let's delve deeper into the NEC requirements related to grounding and bonding. Article 250 of the NEC is dedicated to grounding and bonding and provides detailed requirements for various aspects of grounding systems. Section 250.24 addresses grounding of service-supplied alternating current systems. This section specifies the requirements for connecting the grounding electrode conductor to the grounded conductor, typically the neutral, at the service equipment. It also outlines the requirements for grounding separately derived systems, such as generators and transformers. Section 250.30 covers grounding requirements for separately derived alternating current systems. This section specifies the conditions under which a separately derived system must be grounded and the methods for grounding it. Section 250.50 addresses grounding electrode systems. This section specifies the types of grounding electrodes that are permitted and the requirements for installing them. It also outlines the requirements for bonding different types of grounding electrodes together to form a comprehensive grounding system. Section 250.104 covers bonding of piping systems and exposed structural metal. This section requires that metal water piping systems, gas piping systems, and exposed structural metal that are likely to become energized be bonded to the grounding system. The purpose of this bonding is to create an equipotential plane and minimize the risk of electric shock. Section 250.118 lists the types of equipment grounding conductors that are permitted. These include wire-type equipment grounding conductors, metal raceways, and metal cable armor. The equipment grounding conductor provides a path for fault current to return to the source, allowing overcurrent protection devices to operate. Understanding these NEC requirements is essential for ensuring the safety and compliance of electrical systems. It's always recommended to consult with a qualified electrician who is familiar with the NEC and local electrical codes to ensure that your electrical system is properly grounded and bonded. Remember that electrical codes can vary from location to location, so it's important to be aware of the specific requirements in your area. Also, electrical codes change on a 3-year cycle, so make sure you consult the current version. Let's consider some practical examples of grounding and bonding in residential electrical systems. In a typical residential service entrance, the neutral conductor is bonded to the metal enclosure of the service panel using a bonding jumper. The grounding electrode conductor is then connected to the metal enclosure and to the grounding electrode system, such as a ground rod. This creates a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source. In a bathroom, all metal parts that are likely to become energized, such as metal water pipes and metal enclosures of electrical equipment, must be bonded together. This is typically accomplished by connecting a bonding jumper between the metal parts. The bonding jumper is then connected to the equipment grounding conductor. In a swimming pool, all metal parts associated with the pool, such as metal ladders, metal handrails, and metal enclosures of electrical equipment, must be bonded together. This is typically accomplished by connecting a bonding grid around the perimeter of the pool and bonding all metal parts to the grid. The bonding grid is then connected to the equipment grounding conductor. These examples illustrate the importance of proper grounding and bonding in residential electrical systems. By following the NEC requirements and consulting with a qualified electrician, you can ensure the safety and reliability of your electrical system. Remember that electrical work can be dangerous, so it's always best to leave it to the professionals. If you're not comfortable working with electricity, don't hesitate to call a licensed electrician to handle the job. Electrical safety should always be your top priority. Another key aspect to consider is the proper sizing of conductors. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum size of conductors based on the ampacity or current carrying capacity required for the circuit. It's crucial to use conductors that are appropriately sized for the load they will be carrying to prevent overheating and potential fire hazards. The NEC also specifies requirements for the overcurrent protection of conductors. Overcurrent protection devices, such as circuit breakers and fuses, are designed to protect conductors from overload and short-circuit conditions. The size of the overcurrent protection device must be matched to the ampacity of the conductor. Using an overcurrent protection device that is too large for the conductor can allow the conductor to overheat and potentially cause a fire. In addition to conductor sizing and overcurrent protection, it's important to use proper wiring methods. The NEC specifies various wiring methods that are permitted for different applications. These include conduit, cable, and surface raceway. The wiring method must be appropriate for the environment in which it will be installed. For example, in wet locations such as bathrooms and outdoor areas, conductors must be installed in watertight conduit or cable. When installing electrical equipment, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions. The manufacturer's instructions provide detailed information on how to install and operate the equipment safely and effectively. Ignoring the manufacturer's instructions can lead to equipment failure and potential safety hazards. Regular maintenance of electrical systems is also essential for ensuring safety and reliability. This includes inspecting wiring, connections, and overcurrent protection devices for signs of damage or wear. Any damaged or worn component should be replaced promptly. It's also important to keep electrical panels and equipment clear of obstructions to allow for proper ventilation and access for maintenance. Furthermore, it's crucial to educate yourself and others about electrical safety. This includes teaching children about the dangers of electricity and how to avoid electrical hazards. It also includes providing training to employees who work with electrical equipment. By promoting electrical safety awareness, you can help prevent electrical accidents and injuries. In conclusion, ensuring a safe electrical system involves several key components. Firstly, proper grounding and bonding. Secondly, correct conductor sizing. Thirdly, appropriate overcurrent protection. Fourthly, adherence to wiring methods. Fifthly, following manufacturer's instructions. Sixthly, regular maintenance. And lastly, education and awareness. By paying attention to these aspects, you can create a safe and reliable electrical system for your home or business.